Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you again for joining with us on this Thursday night as we discuss COVID-19 in the marketplace. We are so excited about the topic that we have tonight, the response to education. We have great panelists tonight that is going to discuss the educational system and the changes that we have prior to COVID. If you missed our last sessions on the last couple of Thursdays, you can go back to our website, United Christian Faith Ministries, and you can check out those sessions. We had a lot of wonderful information, valuable information that you may want to utilize as we move forward after COVID-19. I'm Christy Perry. I'm Director of the Social Justice Ministry, United Excel, housed at United Christian Faith Ministry, founded by our pastor, Pastor Mark Ellis. I am so excited that we have a visionary that is dedicated to addressing the issues that plague our city, that plague our communities, and plague our nation. So tonight, we will continue our series of COVID in the marketplace. And we're going to have Retha Wright as our moderator. She will be moderating tonight. A lot of you have children and you're wondering, what are we going to do with the education system? How are we going to handle this? I personally have two beautiful daughters myself. So we have a lot of questions moving forward after COVID. And we have a great panel that's here that are going to answer those questions. We have with us Dr. Kenya Messer with the Louisiana Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, and Mr. Tremaine Howard, Vice President of East Baton Rouge School Board. And so they're going to be talking to us about how to move forward. At the end of this panel, this discussion, we would love for you to ask the questions. Tonight, we have many of the answers to the questions that you all have relative to returning to school after COVID-19. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our moderator, Sister Retha Wright. She's going to take it from here. Sister Retha.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Perry, and I also want to give an extra thank you to Pastor Mark Ellis, our pastor, who is such a visionary that give us the opportunity and the platform to have such an organization as United Excel, where we are just elated and so impactful in being relatable to the community needs. So tonight, as Dr. Perry has introduced our panelist, Dr. Tremaine Howard. He's the vice president of the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. And he's an educator. Tell you a little bit about him. He's an educator, community advocate, and a deep believer in the urgent need for advanced equity in all forms across the context. In 2018, Tremaine became the youngest person ever elected to the East Baton Rouge School Board. Shortly after taking that office, he was installed by his fellow members as the vice president of the board. Tremaine began his professional journey in the education as an 8th grade teacher, serving the Teach for America of South Louisiana after graduating with a Juris Doctorate degree from the Southern University Law Center. It was while he was working in the law as a law student, his family in a family law clinic, that his belief is that the primacy of education is to shape the life trajectories. There, his clients were largely children of color facing financial hardship and trauma and bearing the weight of failures and of an inequity public education system. Tremaine is currently the Louisiana External Relation and Policy Manager of Education Trust, a national nonprofit that works to opportunity gaps for disproportionately affect the students of color and students from low-income families. In that role, he is responsible for managing coalition work, policy implementation, and building community partnerships across the state. Good afternoon, Mr. Howard.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wright. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to this awesome discussion tonight.
Great. And we all have we all are at some type of distress now with the COVID-19, and we just had questions centered around the school system. So, we all know that as we moved into this modified school year, can you tell us what transformations are happening within the school system that the community need to be aware of as it relates to COVID-19?
Yeah, so again, thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I think that for the community as a collective, like this is a very different, uncharted territory for everybody. COVID-19 really like just came like a thief in the night and really just made us really rethink what education was, what education will be, and just the future of education in general. So I think the first point I will make is that for everybody listening and watching is that education will never be what we once saw it as. Education in school will never look like it once did before, and I think that that's a thing that we have to accept first, because it's hard oftentimes for folks to accept change. I think we have, excuse me, have to accept that education is changing and that there's been some changes based off of COVID-19. So transformation within the school district. So I think many people are just wondering what's happening with the upcoming school year. And so I just want folks to know that we are on schedule at this point to start school back like we would traditionally start school back in August. Now, what that looks like is just totally different, and totally unknown. So as we develop the phases of COVID, as the governor releases different orders in different phases, what I tell you today could totally change by then. Because if we go back to the beginning of this process, we had made a decision as a district that we were going to stay in school because we didn't like no one really understand how large of an impact COVID-19 was going to have on the community. So we was like, yeah, we probably can continue going to school. And then when the governor did the shutdown, like we were in like in an unknown territory. And so we are looking to start school regularly. But right now there are three things that are happening as far as summer is concerned. So there's basically two summer remediations going on. They will be starting around July. Summer remediation one is for test retakers. So people think that based off of the provisions that were given out by the governor that there's no more testing, that is a valid statement. There is no more testing for this year, but there are students who had to have retakes from last year. So like, in the high school, you take the exit exam in like 10th and 11th grade to graduate your senior year. So there are still students who need to retake testing. So that's going to take place this summer. And there's also going to be some strong start programs at schools. So right now, principals are developing their strong start strategies. And in these strategies, principals are going to develop what they believe is going to help them have a strong start for the upcoming school year. So that could be targeted at a specific subgroup of students. That could be targeted at ACT boot camps. That could be targeted at a vast array of things that principals are going to develop. Those plans are going to be, they're actually due tomorrow, I believe, from principals. And then the principals are going to submit to the district what they want to do with their strong start to give them an opportunity to have a strong start. I think one thing, and this will be the last thing I say, and then we can continue on to the next question. I'm sorry for being so long, but there's something to be said about distance learning. Like distance learning, I think an opportunity to keep students like in the mindset of doing schoolwork. But when students are missing that face-to-face interaction with a teacher, that plays a very strong role in their development and their learning development throughout the year. So while distance learning is important and it gives us something for kids to stay in the same mindset, we have to address the loss of learning from that face-to-face connection with teachers. So those strong start programs are going to be presented by principals tomorrow to the district. And that's what the CARES Act money is going to be used for. Some of the money is to develop strong starts so that schools can actually identify students that need additional work despite what's happening with COVID-19. So that's where we are right now. And like I said, that could change at any moment, and it's still ongoing and developing. I would just encourage parents to reach out to the district leaders, to reach out to your board member, and reach out to principals to get up-to-date information. And also visit ebrschools.org. There is a COVID-19 tab that provides up-to-date information.
Great. Now, Now, how are the students being helped? Those students with challenges of, in the household, like internet, food, additional resources, and all that. What did the school district doing about that?
So the okay. The school district, so we've been providing meals for students since the beginning of this process. Thankfully, we're able to get meals provided to schools. There were feeding sites across the district where students were able to go and get additional food, just like they were being fed throughout the school year. The Louisiana also has applied for pandemic EBT, so parents are able to get additional EBT funding for students for school-age children. So that's one thing. I think the first priority when this all started was to make sure that students were still being fed. And so that was something that I believe, like just across the state, was done in a way that at least provided kids with at least 2 to 3 meals a day, where they were able to not miss out on the normal nutrition that they would have gotten while they were in school. Now, the internet access problem, I think that's an ongoing conversation and an ongoing issue related to how we make sure that students not only have devices, but also are able to connect and have connectivity with those devices. So there are an array of plans that are on the table as it relates to making sure that goes forward as we think about distance learning in the future. So that's from creating internet hubs where people can go into like different around the school and connect to the internet, or different hubs around the district where people can go and connect to the internet. I think that it's a nationwide problem, where internet connectivity is also tied to socioeconomic status. And we know that in our district, at least like 80% of our students fall into the economically disadvantaged category. So where internet to some people is like, oh, duh, we're gonna have internet like we have lights. For some families, that's like an added expense that they just can't afford. And so we have to go dig deeper. And I think it's not just the school system that needs to dig deeper on this issue. It's also like city council, it's the mayor's office, it's the state legislator, it's the governor. Because when you start talking about FCC and communications, transmissions, and providing it at a large scale, we have universities that don't even have the capabilities to provide a robust online learning programming. So it's going to be a collective effort. So we're trying to build things that sustain itself over time as it relates to internet connectivity. So again, those are all part of the plans as we think about what the school year looks like next year. So yeah, I've been working with our IT director to develop a proposal to submit to the district related to like addressing this issue, not just during COVID-19, but long term, because we know that there's so many of our families who just can't afford additional broadband to have like a really robust internet connectivity. So we submitted that plan with IT, and we're working to like work out the kinks to have something to come before the board to see if the district can not only talk about it, but also put resources behind building that program out.
Great, great. Now, what about parents? Have there been any communication with the household? We ended in a disrupted year for the students, and there are some parents that may have challenges in helping students with some of their homework and things like that. Are there any resources there for the parents to engage in?
So for me, I think so. There hasn't been any. It hasn't came to the board. So if it's out there, if it exists. Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, my internet started being crazy. But if it exists, I apologize to folks. But I haven't. The board hasn't seen any robust planning as it relates to like providing resources directly to parents to help them engage. But part of the plans for the upcoming school year is to address that particular need and that issue regarding parental involvement, and how do we get resources directly to parents to provide one-to-one learning to help them with getting the proper tutoring services that are necessary and needed to actually be able to help them help their students provide or have distance learning. So I haven't seen anything directly from the district, and I think that that's something that the district has dropped the ball with. The professional development specifically connected to parents, but we still are trying to find that professional development for teachers, because not every teacher even has the capability to provide a robust distance learning, program. So I think that that's a priority for me as a board member, and I will be continuously pushing that to the district to make sure that we can put some resources behind it and not just words behind
Yes, it seemed to be a hot topic on social media.
it. Yes, and I agree. I agree 100%. But I just want folks to know, like, I'm one board member, and we have 9 of us, and so some things that I think are like common sense priorities are not always priorities to everyone. So I mean, that's the importance of staying engaged and staying involved, and just asking the right questions, and reaching out to folks to get answers. Because like I said, I will never say that I have all the answers. So I'm always welcome to hear what other folks are saying, and their perspective around these issues.
Great, great. Now, I know you all are in the final stages of what you all are doing with a new superintendent for the parish. So, can you kind of shed some light? What are you looking for that, the expectations on that superintendent, and what new are you expecting her to bring to the district to improve what we improve what we have been living with? So, can you just expound a little on your superintendent fulfillment?
Yes, so I'm glad you said it's her, because at this point we know that at any rate it'll be a lady. So we'll have a woman superintendent here in the district. And yeah, for me, I think it's for me. I have like 3 major priorities that I think will help us as a district see the next level, and I'm very optimistic that whoever is selected will be able to take us to that place. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about or start thinking about is resource equity. I think we spend a lot of our money that we have. I mean, our school district has almost a $500 million budget. So we spend a lot of money in places. I mean, we do really well for kids who are in high performing schools, but not so much for kids who are in low performing schools. So I think there needs to be a resource equity agenda from the next superintendent. I think that needs to be a priority, and making sure that schools are not only getting equal things, but they're actually getting the things that they need across the district. I think that teacher diversity is a major key. The research says that students who see teachers who look like them perform well. So like, how do we increase our teacher diversity and provide them with the resources and the development that they need to be successful inside of classrooms? And how do we provide incentives for highly qualified teachers to teach in some of our underperforming schools, so that we can elevate those schools to the next level? And then I think we have to deal specifically with graduation rates, specifically of our subgroup of African American men. The performance rates for African American men in our district is dismal, and we as a district have not been intentional enough to address it. And so, like, what are we doing that is like actual intentional incentives to make sure that our young men of color are graduating from high school? And so I think those are the 3 things that our next superintendent, our next leader needs to focus on. And I think that with the resource equity, you'll see schools start to perform better. You'll see teachers feeling more confident to be inside of their schools. And I just think that the district as a collective needs a cultural reset. There has been so much back and forth in this district for so long, and people have just been not trusting of the district. And I think that we have to, as a district, acknowledge that, and then figure out how do we reach all of the stakeholders, because we will never agree on everything. Like, no one on this call can agree on every single thing as it relates to education, but there are 90% of things that we can agree on, things and outcomes better for students. So how do we make sure that we are focused in on those things that we can agree on to make outcomes better for students? So I'm very optimistic about the next superintendent and who we select. I've been very clear that I believe that representation matters, and in the selection of this next leader. And I think that students should be able to look at a leader that looks like them, and the majority of the students in this district. And so, like, I've been very candid about that being a priority for me as a board member, and that still is a priority for me as a board member. I just think that especially in today's time, it's been a very traumatic week specifically for the Black community. And so, like, we have to understand the importance of representation and leadership. And so that is a priority for me, and I will stand by that being a priority for me.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see that Dr. Tia is here with us now. Good afternoon, Dr. Mills. How are you doing?
Good evening. How are you?
Good, good, good. Um, Briefly, I'm going to give a little introduction to Dr. Mills here. She is the president of the Louisiana Association of Educators, and she's a spokeswoman for over 18,000 members in that association. She is a teacher and public school advocate where she leads the association efforts to the state legislature and Betsy, that's Board of Secondary and Elementary Education. The exceptional student service teacher in Southern University adjunct professor from East Baton Rouge Parish has been a classroom teacher for 13 years. Dr. Mills has a doctorate in higher education and organization leadership, a bachelor's of art in history, a master's of art degree in social science, and alternative certification in mild and moderate special education from the Southern University. Outside of her work in public education, Dr. Mills is a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, 100 Black women of Metropolitan Baton Rouge, the Junior League of Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge Democratic Parish Committee, and a life member of the Southern University Alumni Federation. Good afternoon, Dr. Mills.
Good evening. It's truly a
Good.
pleasure to be on the panel tonight, and I look forward to our discussion.
Great, great, great. Now, a lot of people don't really know what is you got the school system and you got BESS and you got all these organizations that say they're for education. Can you kind of expand and tell us what is the Louisiana Association of Educators and who do you represent?
The Louisiana Association of it's the Louisiana Association of Educators. I got tongue-tied for a second. As much as I say that, you would think that I would be accustomed to saying it with very much. Um, I really think that our association has been uh, a proponent of public education, promoting that and ensuring the fact that we represent all public school employees. That's from the paraprofessional, from the cafeteria worker, from the school clerk, guidance counselor. So we don't just represent teachers, and we represent administrators as well. We support all public school employees. And we even have some who are janitors, depending on the district you're in, right? So for 43 years, the Louisiana Association of Educators has been a merged association with African American, Caucasian, individuals of all races and backgrounds in the association. And I just mentioned this earlier tonight on another panel. It's worked for us. It's been extremely effective. And we truly have been, I think, a force to be reckoned with in terms of making sure that the most important thing of all and getting our message across is the students. The message of making sure that the students get everything that they need and ensuring the general public that we are here for partnerships. We are part of a coalition. We work with school boards. We work with the superintendents. We work with all individuals from every background that is a part of the education spectrum, the public education spectrum. So that is what the Louisiana Association of Educators has come to be, and that's what we will continue to be.
Great, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we're talking about COVID here now, and as COVID has brought about some changes in the way we think, the way we act, the way we react. So, as being the president of the Louisiana Association of Educators, are there any policy changes that will be impacted by that? And can you expound on any of those that what you are doing about that?
Well, one of the first things that we immediately did, I can remember exactly where I was when the discussions were being made in terms of uh, doing the stay-at-home order. So I was in the Senate chambers and at the state capitol, and I've been having conversations with other state presidents, and I knew really quickly that if the pandemic had made it to Louisiana already, that it was coming, and it was coming very soon. And so I started having conversations with the necessary legislators to ensure that the stress of testing and evaluations would not be something that students and educators would have to worry about, and parents. And so that is when I started having conversations with Senator Barrow, Senator Fields, individuals such as those great, outstanding individuals, to ensure that that aspect would be basically suspended for the year. Um, Another thing that we were advocating in terms of is the CARES Act, to make sure that the adequate funding, because we knew that it was coming once it was approved, right? And so I had written a letter to the governor's office, and I'd been having conversations along with my team with the governor's team to ensure that we were identifying the monies that we would like to see allocated towards the areas that needed it, such as broadband internet for our students, especially those in rural communities and poverty-stricken areas. Um, to make sure that students who needed Chromebooks, laptops, things of that nature receive them, because while there are uh, some who have students with only one child in the household, there are other families who have multiple children in the household, right? So there's no way that every child could share a technology outlet such as a Chromebook or an iPad or a laptop. They had to have their own device in order to get the work that they needed done while we were under the pandemic. Another thing that we looked at as well is to ensure that districts had the adequate PPE that they needed, and that members in the prospective locals had some type of representation on a task force if it was something that was implemented in those districts. We were encouraging the local presidents for sure to encourage the school board members to put together a task force during the pandemic to have those necessary voices at the table in order to move the work of the prospective districts. And we have had some who have effectively done that. I've had local presidents to come to me about concerns that they had about multiple calendars that were implemented, because we are still trying to work through all of this, right? None of us know exactly what education is going to look like in the future, but we do know that to a certain degree, the way that things are now, some aspect of it is possibly going to be implemented in the next school year, especially in terms of digital and using virtual uh, 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 at platforms for education. So I really think that we have been true advocates of that, trying to make sure that everyone has everything that they need, encouraging school board members and other stakeholders that we are here to work with you and partner with you. And so I'm hoping that my local affiliate, the East Baton Rouge Parish Association of Educators, I hope that they've been having those conversations, those candid conversations with school board members. My school board members, such as Mr. Howard, who's on the panel tonight. I'm hoping that they had those conversations with those individuals so they can have their voice at the table. And I did get a call earlier from one of the administrators of East Baton Rouge Parish. And so we are taking one step further ahead to make sure that we are a part of the conversations. And I'm encouraging that all the members of the community, some representative from the community, is a part of the conversation as well. So um, I'm not exactly sure if there's anything else you wanted me to add. I'm hoping that I answered the question for the most part.
Great.
But we're still working, right? Because the Heroes Act has not been passed, and so we're still it made it through the House, and so we're encouraging that the Senate. We had a Red for Ed rally just yesterday, as well as a press conference to encourage the general public, our membership, to reach out to congressmen across the United States, not just the ones here at home, to make sure that they pass the Heroes Act, because there's still additional funding that needs to get pushed through, because we want to make sure that those funds, those critical funds, get into the areas in which they are needed.
Great, great. And so we'll wrap it up with that question, going and talk about the employees, since you represent such a wide variety. Just wanted to do a good health check here to make sure that everybody still got paid while they're going through this. All our school employees are still being paid. All benefits are intact. Everything is cool with them.
The only concerns that I had around pay during the pandemic were those individuals who were substitute teachers, those who were on who weren't on contracts or anything like that. I'm trying to think of what other individuals who may have had some concerns. Those who were on sick leave. There were some individuals from that side of membership who also reached out, excuse me, because they had major concerns. And then there was also concerns about, okay, well, I didn't do, and this is optional depending on which district you're in. I didn't do deferred payment, which means that a certain portion of their salary is placed aside, is dedicated towards uh, uh, payment throughout the summer, right? So they can have some type of income to sustain, to pay their bills throughout the summer. Some were concerned about that because they did not do deferred payment, and they wanted to know if whether or not they could possibly reach as far as going into their retirement. That's first and foremost something I do not encourage, but I did have a conversation with the executive director for the Teachers Retirement System of Louisiana, Ms. Dana Vicknair, and she indicated to me that there's no policies currently in place that would allow a current employee to reach into, to dip into those funds. You would have to leave the district altogether, and then there's a grace period in order for a former employee to be able to gain access to those funds. But I need individuals to be mindful. If you reach into those funds, do know that in order to, if you were to return to any type of district and needed to have those years, you would have to basically either pay that money to get those years back, or work those years.
Okay.
That's something that I don't think a lot of individuals considered. I'm not sure. I can't speak on what transpired during the Great Flood of Baton Rouge, but that was a conversation that did come up during that time as well, about reaching into pension funds in order to, I guess, have some type of relief in terms of being able to rebuild homes and for, what have you.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mills.
Yes.
Our next panelist is Dr. Kenya Messer, and Dr. Messer she's the CEO, and she's the president and CEO of the Louisiana Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. And as a committed student advocate, Dr. Kenya Messer has served as an education and university administrator in position ranging from associate dean of students affairs at Columbia, Vice President of Student Development and Enrollment Management at Wilberforce University in Ohio, the Associate Vice Provost for Diversity in the Division of Academic Affairs at LSU. In addition to her administrative history, with higher ed, she is a published author, a researcher, a lecturer, and a national presenter on issues impacting students' success, access, and retention in college, organizational strategies, and change management, African American students in international education. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology with a minor in dance from Union College, a master's degree in counseling as in student personnel from Columbia University, a doctorate of education research and studied in London, England, Athens, Greece, and Rome, Italy. Dr. Messer has been recognized by the Consortium of Doctors, the Urban League, the Educational Policy Institute, the National Association of Student Personnel and Administrators, the National Diversity Council, and the U.S. Office of Minority Health, and is a fellow of the American Academic Leadership Institute in Washington, D.C. And there's much, 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 much more. She has such an impressive resume, and we are so fortunate to have her with us tonight. As always, she always says yes. Thank you, Dr. Messer.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. It's like being home. I think the piece that resonates most clearly for me on my bio is that I'm a member of the United Christian Faith Ministries Church in Baton Rouge. So I'm very pleased to be here to share with all of you and talk with my colleagues tonight.
Great. And Dr. Messer is here with us representing higher education. And, as colleges and universities are preparing for that next step into how and when they will open, can you provide us with any updates on enrollment or re-enrollment for those students that will be incoming students, current enrolled students, graduating students, or how they need to connect to the workforce?
Absolutely. And so, during this time, our colleges and universities have continued to be open. It's been very challenging, but we've been open in a remote learning environment. We very quickly pivoted and moved, particularly with our residential colleges, students home that could go home in a matter of weeks, but the learning continued. And so with that, we never stopped serving our student populations. We're very committed to supporting students. In addition to classes moving online, we spent a lot of time transitioning student support services, tutoring, extracurricular activities, really trying to keep a sense of normalcy for our students throughout this time in a very challenging environment. And then also, we really have worked to keep the experiences consistent and also making sure that the faculty, staff, and administrators were supported and had all the things and tools and resources they needed, again, in order to be able to support our students. As such, most colleges and universities across the state will continue to support their students online, certainly through summer school. Summer schools are open at just about all of the colleges and universities here in the state, and that learning will happen online. And then we're really focusing on preparing for resuming face-to-face classes in the fall. So that is the goal for all of our institutions. But the plans will be guided by the science. They'll be guided by the CDC, by the Louisiana Department of Health, and certainly by any of the executive orders that come out from the governor. So while that is our plan, we certainly will be looking towards the guidance of how the phased-in approach will allow us to offer face-to-face learning in the fall. I think a couple of things to think about. In the interim, it's a few things that just are important to note. So for returning students, making sure that you have connected with your faculty, with your advisors, with administrators around re-enrollment, that your registration is intact, making sure that you've taken care of everything that you need to take care of as if you will be returning to campus in the fall. So if there were housing considerations that needed to be made, just really following through with all of those pieces. And again, with our institutions being open remotely, that means that there are administrators and staff there to be able to help you, as well as really robust online tools through websites and social media. For our first year students, our incoming students, the high school class of 2020 that graduated, first saying congratulations, but the focus will be on making sure that you have taken care of all the pieces that you need to take care of around wrapping up your high school experience. Some students are still completing and waiting for graduation to happen. So it'll be critically important that anything having to do with your transcripts, if you were part of dual enrollment or FAST or any of those programs, that you're working with the administrations back at your high school to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row, as they say, to be able to transition smoothly into your first year experience at the college of your choice. And then if you are, transfer students, similarly, again, making sure that you have all of the documentation intact from your school that you will be transferring from to your school that you'll be transferring to. Another consideration for students that may have been planning to go to school out of state, or even are Louisiana residents that do attend school out of state and had to come back home because of the pandemic, you may be considering staying closer to home for at least the next semester. You may even be considering transferring. So really just making sure that you're in touch with your home institution if in fact you've decided to do that, and know that all the colleges and universities here in the state of Louisiana are open and really welcoming to any student that may have had to rethink things because of the pandemic coming home. Maybe there are financial considerations that now need to come into play because folks are out of work. So I would just really urge you that if that is something that you are considering, even if you haven't made the decision completely, at least do the research, look at some of the institutions here in your home area, and begin to start those conversations so you do have that as an option if in fact you decide that you don't want to return to school out of state. And then for students that, are just thinking about now what their next steps are because they've just completed college, congratulations, class of 2020, really making sure that you're connected to the resources in your campus so that you can transition into the workforce. If you are blessed to have a position or to be headed off to graduate or professional school, congratulations. If you're still looking, now's the time that if you're not connected with career services on your campuses, please avail and make that connection. Through remote learning, through online, they're offering a lot of support around career coaching, support around virtual interviews and virtual fairs, support around virtual connections for internships. Most colleges and universities contract with a tool called Handshake, which is a job placement tool that undergrads can use to help them in searching and seeking for jobs and putting resumes together and all those pieces that are critically important for transitioning out. So at every step that you're approaching higher ed, whether you've just graduated and you're coming in, whether you're a transfer student thinking about staying close to home, whether you're a rising sophomore, junior, senior, or whether you're a graduating student, the goal is to really be focused on what are the administrative pieces you need to take care of? What do you need to make sure that you have intact in terms of connecting with folks at your home institution? And also, how are you making sure to make the most out of all those resources that are there?
Great, wonderful. Thank you. Now, as everyone is aware, we know that the seniors had a very disruptive school ending, and we're somewhat off target when it comes down to those testings like ACT scores, testing. I'm sorry. So how are you making the adjustment for ACT testing and their TOS requirement for those incoming students?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there have been adjustments made and taken into consideration given these challenging times in the semester that our students have. And our students have just been very resilient, particularly when you think about high school students in this high school class. They entered during the Great Flood, and so they're exiting during this COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't think that there's, a more clear example of just resiliency, the resiliency of youth. But with that in mind, really focusing on making sure that we could provide support for students, recognizing the challenges could be hitting them from all areas. So, the first piece was that the LEAP assessment was canceled or waived for graduating seniors that are graduating this year anytime before August 31st. So that's one piece that was sort of lifted off of that class. Second, since the April ACT was canceled or postponed, that didn't give those students that were waiting for that test date to qualify for TOPS, it didn't give them a chance to do that. So as a result of that, through an executive order of Governor Edwards, the date to qualify for TOPS has been shifted to September 30th. And so that's going through legislative process right now, but That means if you are a graduating senior, you still have an opportunity to take one of the upcoming ACTs. I believe there's a date scheduled in June and there's a date scheduled in July. And if you get the qualifying score, because you still need to have that qualifying ACT score, then you still can be considered for top. So you still have that opportunity, which otherwise wouldn't have been available. So, very appreciative of the leadership of Governor Edwards to provide that additional space for our students. Another piece that's been very useful as it pertains to TOPS is for currently enrolled students. So currently enrolled students that currently are receiving the TOPS award know that they have to continue on satisfactory academic progress. And so that's been not waived, but there's flexibility that's been in place, understanding that this semester you've had students that intended to be successful and to do very, very well. COVID-19 hit. Some of them contracted COVID-19. Some of them had family members that contracted COVID-19, or they've lost family members. Some students had to take on an extra job in order to help make ends meet. All of those life situations and circumstances that come in can take a student who is on track to be successful and have their grades be hit because now they have lots of other competing priorities. So as a result of that, through that executive order, those students are provided another semester to be able to pull their grades up and not lose their eligibility for TOPS. So if they didn't have the best semester this semester, which is understandably so because of just the severity of this COVID-19 crisis, then they still have the fall semester and their TOPS will not be affected. So that's something important for students to know. If they didn't catch that ruling, it helps them to know and to kind of breathe easy on, okay, I'll have another opportunity to be able to bring up those scores. And I think as, parents that are supporting students, certainly the high school students, make sure that you're advocating on behalf of your students and making sure the students are being connected to all of the resources that are available to them and staying on top of these different datelines and deadlines in order to get the support that's needed to be able to move forward.
Right, great. Okay, as the universities are working with limited staff in terms of work at home, and they're having different processes for the public to access to them, how are the students getting support, like for their FAFSA or LASPA information?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's lots of support on hand. Staff is still at the universities, and so there are still people available during business hours to be able to converse with students. Many of the high schools still have staff on board to be able to assist with that. We are very, very fortunate here in the state of Louisiana through the Board of Regents to have LOFSA, the Louisiana Office of Financial Student Assistance, and through their website. And I'd imagine we're going to provide some follow-up notes, and I'll make sure that we have that web link for you to send out. It's a comprehensive site to provide students and families with all types of resources and support around making sure that they can get not only the FAFSA completed, but get any of their questions answered, certainly about the pieces that I just mentioned with TOPS, but really just the process itself. And so I would urge you, if you haven't connected through that office, to certainly spend some time on that website. Also, if you have not completed your FAFSA, please complete your FAFSA. That is critically important. That's the federal financial aid form. And it really is a requirement. It's a requirement if you become eligible for TOPS, you will have to have that FAFSA on file, but it also provides you to be in the pool for the resources that can be supportive through Pell or any of the federal grants or any of the state grants, or sometimes they're institutional grants and scholarships that are made available once that paperwork is done. So if you've not completed your FAFSA, please take time to do that. So I think the biggest takeaways as it pertains to just financing education is complete the FAFSA if you haven't done it. Certainly go on the LOFSA website and avail yourself of the tools and resources and support there. And then finally, be entrepreneurial and looking at other sources for financing your education. A very good source is the uncf.org website. There are hundreds of scholarships there. There are scholarships for students attending any type of college, in addition to our phenomenal HBCUs. There are scholarships to provide a pathway to other colleges and universities. Make sure you're looking at community organizations that either you or your families are engaged with. And one space that students and families often overlook are employer scholarships. So make sure that whoever you yourself are employed by, or if you are a working student, or that your family members, your parents or guardians are employed by, make sure that you check out the benefits and see if in fact there are scholarships that may be available for you to put towards your education as well.
Great, great, great. Wonderful information. And at this time, we're going to open up our chat session to the audience to see if there are any questions for our panelists. Please do so at this time. Enter your questions, please. Any questions? Dr. Perry?
Hello, hello, hello. I'm back. It looks like we don't have any questions at this time. But remember, if you enjoy this information and enjoy what we're presenting here from United Excel and you have more information that you would like to share, you can text God More to 225-250-1970 if you have resources that you want to make available, or if you just have topics that you would like for us to discuss, you can text God More to that number. You can also text Justice to the same number, 225-250-1970, if you want to be a part of this phenomenal team of people. And so we have that information available to you. I would just like to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to this beautiful panel. You all have provided us with so much information as a parent and as an employee in the educational system. I gained a lot of knowledge. I see we do have a question. And one of the questions, and I can probably direct this to any of you on the panel. When should a junior ask for financial assistance?
A junior in high school or a junior in college?
I'm thinking a junior in high school. Anybody?
I mean, I'll take a minute from the higher education perspective. The student would not be eligible for entering support such as Pell or filling out the financial aid to receive the scholarships or grants until they are ready to attend the institution. But during the junior year, they certainly can begin to do that research. And again, a couple of the other sources that I mentioned, such as the potential scholarships through the employer, either their own personal employer or their family's employers, also potential scholarships through benevolent and community organizations can be made available to students to sort of stockpile as they begin to prepare for going to college. So, it's never too early to begin your research. It's never too early to begin to find out where all of those sources are. And one most important thing that students can do is to make sure that they're doing their best in their coursework and their best in their community service and their extracurriculars so that they will be eligible for additional merit-based and those types of scholarships. So that would be what I would add from a higher ed perspective.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Messer. Dr. Mills, did you want to add something?
I was going to piggyback on Dr. Messer. The one thing that I would definitely recommend is that you start conducting research on the different scholarships that are available out there. I'm definitely frequent during the time that I was in school. I frequented UNCF, but I also received the NAACP scholarship. There are also a number of sorority and fraternity scholarships out there, foundation scholarships, university foundation scholarships, and the National Merit Examination. If I'm not mistaken, you can take it starting in the 10th grade, and the 11th grade also is the other grade that you can take it in. That opens the door for a number of scholarships also that you can be eligible for if you were to, depending on how you do on that national merit exam. So I would recommend those options as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mills, for that. So we have plenty of information. Hey, They've given you a lot of information as it relates to financial aid and applying for those financial aids. I'd say go for it. Um, and we had a wonderful discussion tonight. Dr. Messer, Dr. Mills, Mr. Howard, Retha, wonderful moderator. Thank you all so much for coming on and sharing this information with us. I would also like to thank our media team. Sherman has been with us for the last 4 weeks. Every single Thursday, he is with us and he is making sure we have it together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doing a phenomenal job. Um, next week, you know, we've had a lot going on as it relates to social justice or injustice. Next week, join us next week in response to the recent murder by police of Mr. Floyd in Minnesota. We will be having a discussion yet next week. We're going to talk about the kingdom insights into injustice, the kingdom insights into injustice in America, a response or a reaction. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. We are really excited about that. We want to, get together. Let's talk about this. Let's discuss this. Let's discuss ways of moving forward. And so that's all that we have for you tonight. Thanks to everyone that have watched online. If you want to learn about the information that we've done thus far, you can go to the United Christian Faith Ministries YouTube channel or our Facebook page and look at that great information. So I will see you all next week. And again, thank you to our panelists and good night.
Good night.
Good night, and thank you all.
Okay.